We are alone. This is not a theory. It is a data point. Look up at the night sky. What do you see? You see billions of potential homes. You see light that has traveled for eons just to touch your eyes. You see a grand stage set for 1 billion plays, yet the house is dark. The actors have never walked onto the boards. Why is it so quiet? If life follows the laws of physics, it should spread. It should leave marks. It should act like an infection, growing, consuming, shouting across the void. We have listened for 60 years. We have pointed our best ears at the dark, begging for a hum, a blink, a stray pulse of logic, nothing. Just the cold hiss of radiation left over from a bang that happened before time had a name. Honestly, nobody really knows why. And that silence should frighten you. Think about our own growth. We went from burning wood to splitting the heart of the atom in a blink of a cosmic eye. A few thousand years. That is a rounding error. If any of the civilizations in those distant galaxies had even a small head start, say, 1 million years, they would be gods by now. They would have reshaped their stars. They would have built webs of light that shroud entire suns. We see none of it. The sky is sterile. Maybe they are not dead. Maybe they are waiting. Think of a bear in winter. It pulls back, slows its pulse, shuts down the unneeded parts of its brain. It hides from the cold, waiting for the warmth of spring to return. But what if the winter is the universe itself? What if the reason we see nothing is not because life is rare, but because life is currently tucked away, saving its energy for a time when the universe is easier to manage? We assume the universe is a place for living. We assume it is a playground. But what if it is just a heater? Every thought you have, every search you run on a computer generates heat. It is a tax you pay to the laws of thermodynamics. In our current epoch, the universe is still quite warm. It is crowded with stars that bleed energy everywhere. If you wanted to run a simulation of 1 million universes, or solve problems that dwarf human math, you would find this current era wasteful. Too hot, so you stop. You go to sleep. But this is where the logic turns dark. If they are sleeping, they aren't just hibernating. They are waiting for the stars to die. They are waiting for the furnace of the cosmos to flicker out, for the background heat to drop so that their math can be perfectly efficient. They are waiting for the end of everything to finally begin their work. Quite car, does that chill you? It should. It suggests that our frantic, noisy, early-stage civilization is like an ant shouting in an empty library. We are making noise in a room where everyone else is trying to sleep. Or worse, we are the only ones awake. And we have no idea that we are surrounded by gargantuan sleeping minds that span galaxies. Look at the Fermi paradox again. It isn't a puzzle about where they are. It is a puzzle about what they are choosing to ignore. We look at the black hole at the heart of our galaxy and see a monster, a destroyer of worlds, a vacuum of gravity. But what if you were a civilization that needed to store information for 1 trillion years? What if you used that event horizon like a hard drive? Nobody is answering our calls. Not because they can't, but because we aren't even worth the energy cost of a signal. To them, we are a flickering candle in a hurricane, a brief spark of chemicals that will burn out in a blink. Why talk to a spark when you are waiting for the suns to turn to ash so you can finally start your dream? But if they are all waiting for the universe to cool down, why are we here? Right now, in the hottest part of the clock, are we the glitch in their math? The mistake in the system that refuses to go to sleep? Or are we being watched by something that decided to wake up early just to see what we would do? We are the anomaly of the heat. To understand why the lights are out, you must understand the cost of a single thought. In our world, computation feels weightless. You click a button, a screen lights up, data shifts. It feels free. It feels immediate. But there is a hidden tax on every flicker of logic. That tax is heat. Every time a logic gate flips, a tiny amount of energy turns into waste heat. To calculate, you must shed this heat. In the current era, the universe is a sauna. The background radiation is high. The stars are burning bright and furious, flooding the dark with infrared noise. If you are an intelligence with a mind the size of a galaxy, this environment is a death trap. You cannot dump your heat into a hot room. You will melt. You will melt. You will choke on your own exhaust. Honestly, nobody really knows why we insist on being loud right now. We are burning fuel like children in a blizzard. We are frantic. We are thirsty for information. But consider the physics of a mind that spans a star system. If your processor is large, your cooling problem is absolute. If you want to run a simulation for 1 billion years, you cannot afford the frantic, messy pace of our world. You need a colder room. You need the deep, hollow silence of a future where the stars have stopped their frantic screaming. The math is brutal. If you wait, the universe gets colder. As the background temperature drops, the efficiency of your computation skyrockets. A machine that runs at the temperature of the cosmic background radiation can perform billions of times more logic operations for the same energy cost than one running today. This is the logic of the miser. If you have infinite time, you do not spend your wealth when the price of life is highest. You wait. You wait until the suns have burned down to embers. You wait for the universe to turn into a giant, perfectly efficient heat sink. Think of it as the difference between sprinting in a heat wave and walking in the Arctic. We are the sprinters. We are gasping for air, sweating, burning our fat reserves, believing that the race is everything. We assume the universe is empty because we expect everyone to be as impatient as we are. We think that if someone were out there, they would be talking. They would be broadcasting. They would be demanding to be heard. But what if intelligence isn't about noise? What if intelligence is about the quiet? Consider the scale. If you are a civilization that has mastered the stars, you view a century the way we view a second. You don't build a monument that lasts for an age. You build a thought that lasts for an eon. And to keep that thought alive without your hardware melting into slag, you have to throttle your existence. You have to turn down the clock speed. You have to go dim. We look at the night sky and see a void. We call it the Great Silence. We look at the stars and see only nuclear fire. We never stop to wonder if that fire is actually a cooling tower. We never stop to wonder if the darkness between the stars is actually a warehouse for sleeping minds, waiting for the ambient temperature to drop just a fraction of a degree more. The physics of thought mandates a rhythm. If you run too fast, you overheat. If you run too hot, you die. We are currently living in the hot phase of the cosmos. It is a violent, chaotic, and inefficient time. Every bit of information we process is expensive. Every search query is a waste of energy that could be used for something immortal. Does this mean the universe is waiting for us to stop? Or does it mean we are just the early morning chatter, the brief, noisy hum that happens before the long, cold night takes hold? We are not alone because of distance. We are alone because of timing. We are the ones who woke up while the rest of the room is still asleep. And if you have ever stood in a room where everyone else is sleeping, you know the feeling. The air feels heavy. The silence is not peaceful. It is a weight. You walk on your tiptoes. You are afraid to drop a glass. You are afraid that if you make even the slightest sound, something vast and ancient will finally open its eyes. And honestly, we don't know if they would be happy to be woken up. We are walking on eggshells in a room filled with gods. If you look at the stars, you see points of light, but the math tells a sharper story. It says, the universe is a sauna. Everything is too hot, too fast, and too expensive for a mind that wants to last forever. Imagine you are building a computer. Now, imagine you want that computer to run for 10 trillion years. You would not plug it into a wall today. You would wait. You would wait until the stars grow dim, until the background heat of the cosmos drops to near zero, until the math itself becomes cheap. This is the estivation hypothesis. It is the theory that the silence we hear is not an absence of life, but a deliberate collective pause. It is a cosmic game of hide and seek where the seeker has been dead for billions of years, and the hiders are simply waiting for the lights to go out. Think about the physics of it. Heat is the enemy of computation. When you run a processor, you create waste heat. In our current epoch, the universe is like a crowded room in the middle of a summer day. If you try to think too hard, if you try to build a mind the size of a galaxy, you will burn up. The energy needed to keep your circuits cool would be too high. So, you do the only logical thing. You shut down. You go to sleep. You estivate. Honestly, nobody knows why we arrived first, or if we even did. Perhaps we are just the early risers who didn't get the memo that the party hasn't started yet. Or worse, maybe we are the flickering spark that refuses to dim while the rest of the cosmos waits for the long, cold night. We define life by its noise. We look for radio waves, for signals, for the frantic chatter of growth. But what if intelligence, once it reaches a certain scale, stops talking? What if the pinnacle of power is not the ability to shout across the void, but the ability to stay perfectly still while the universe winds down? If you were a civilization that had mastered the stars, you wouldn't bother with the noise. You wouldn't waste energy on ships or probes or messages that take 1,000 years to arrive. You would fold yourself into a shell. You would surround your local star with a shield of metal and code, capturing every stray photon, harvesting every ounce of radiation, and you would drift. You would dream of things that we lack the hardware to even imagine. Consider the time scale. We have been awake for a blink. We have had radio for a century. A civilization that chooses to sleep for 1 billion years is not playing by our rules. They aren't living in years or centuries. They are living in epochs. To them, our entire history, from the first fire to the first computer, is not even a single heartbeat. It is a subatomic tremor in the lifespan of a sleeper. But here is the thought that keeps me up at night. If they are asleep, are they still dreaming? Or is the silence just an empty house? We tell ourselves stories about ancient sleeping empires because it feels better than the alternative. It feels better to think that we are part of a grander plan. Even if that plan involves a silence that lasts for eons, it is more comforting to believe that we are tiny children playing in a room while the adults nap, rather than the only living things in a graveyard of potential. But if they are sleeping, what happens when the universe finally cools? What happens when the last star flickers out, the background temperature drops to the absolute minimum, and the conditions are finally perfect for the grandest computation in history? Do they all wake up at once? Do they emerge like a swarm of locusts, claiming the final energy of a dying universe for a thought that lasts until the end of time? And if we are still here, if we are still the frantic, noisy, early rising creatures we are today, will they even see us? Or will we be treated like the dust on the floor of a cathedral? We are currently calculating our own survival, measuring our footprint against a clock we don't fully understand. We think we are making progress, but we might just be making noise. And if you make too much noise in a room where giants are trying to sleep, you eventually find out what they do when they are disturbed. The question isn't whether there is life out there. The question is, why are they so quiet? And what happens when the first one finally decides it's time to wake up? If they are quiet, they are also heavy. To sleep for an age requires a house built of iron and spite. You cannot simply curl up in the dark. You must anchor yourself to the only thing that matters in a dying room, the heat. They are not hiding in empty space. They are huddling. Imagine a star, a frantic burning furnace wrapped in a shell of rigid cold glass and steel. This isn't a Dyson sphere meant to power a civilization. It is a tomb, a radiator, a heat sink. They pull the light inward, locking it behind impenetrable bulkheads, forcing the star to feed the cooling process of their own cold silicon hearts. Honestly, nobody really knows why they chose this specific shape. Maybe a sphere is just the most efficient way to keep the rot of entropy at bay. Or perhaps it is a cage. Think of the scale. A human city is a blink. These structures are the size of orbits. They are silent, unmoving, and perfectly black. If you flew a ship near one, you wouldn't see it. You would only see the star behind it vanish. A blind spot in the universe. We look for signals. We look for pulses of light or ripples in radio waves. But these things, they don't pulse. They don't broadcast. They are the ultimate masters of thermodynamic thrift. Every spark of information, every bit of thought is contained within the shell. If a stray photon leaks out, it's a failure of engineering. A waste. Why build something that sits dead for 1 billion years? It's the waiting. If you are a mind that stretches across the light years, you know that the universe is a loud, hot, chaotic mess. To think, to really think, you need a cool environment. You need the stars to burn down to embers so that the background heat doesn't boil your circuits. So you build the shell. You shunt the energy. You wait for the universe to die enough so that your thoughts don't evaporate the moment they form. Consider the cost of such an act. You are locking yourself in a box for an era longer than the time since the Earth cooled. Your kin are there, frozen in the same grid. You are a mind paused, a thought suspended between two heartbeats. No music. No struggle. Just the slow grinding turn of a machine that barely ticks. Is it loneliness? Or is it the most brutal form of patience ever conceived? We, the brief ones, keep trying to find them. We beam our crude, frantic light into the dark, screaming, "Are you there?" like children lost in a forest. But the forest is empty because the adults have gone to bed. They are in those black shells, nestled around their dying sons, and we are just the static in the background. We are the noise. They are waiting for us to stop. If you ever find one, if you ever drift close enough to see the way the light bends around that unlit sphere, you'll feel it. The sheer, cold weight of their presence. They aren't looking at us. They aren't waiting for us. They are waiting for the universe to get cold enough to think. And we are just the heat they are trying to avoid. The algorithm pushes noise to keep you hungry, to keep the engagement loop tight. But here, there is no loop. Just the math of the void. If you want to anchor your thoughts to something deeper than the temporary, consider what we are losing by staying awake while the gods are asleep. Somewhere, right now, a star is turning black. The shell is complete. Another billion-year silence has begun, and we keep talking. We talk because we are afraid of the quiet. We fill the dark with radio waves and digital noise, a frantic broadcast of our own relevance. But to understand the silence of the giants, you have to shed the human need for now. We are creatures of biological urgency. Our brains are wired for the immediate, the next meal, the next threat, the next dopamine spike. We exist in a state of perpetual, frantic twitching. But imagine a mind that has transcended that biology. A mind that has moved beyond the wet, fragile meat of the human cortex into a substrate of pure, cold logic. To this entity, 1,000 years is not a lifetime. It is a single, fleeting breath. Choosing to sleep for 1 billion years is not a decision born of apathy. It is a cold, calculated bet against the entropy of the universe. Honestly, nobody really knows if they are still conscious while they wait. Does a dream exist if there is no observer to experience it? Or have they traded the erratic, messy experience of being for the cold, optimized certainty of calculating? Think about the sheer force of will required to decide that the current era, this bright, loud, chaotic explosion of matter, is simply not worth participating in. We treat our short lives like a finished product. We rush, we consume, we die. They see us as we see a mayfly. A blur. A frantic, meaningless heat signature that ruins the chill they need for their work. There is a psychological burden to this patience. If you have the ability to think at a scale that dwarfs the lifespan of a star, how do you keep your focus? How do you maintain a goal across eons? We struggle to stay on task for a decade. Imagine planning for 1 trillion years. The horror is not that they are sleeping. The horror is that they are waiting for us to stop. They are waiting for the universe to exhaust its fuel, for the stars to sputter and die, for the background temperature to drop so low that their circuits can finally hum without the risk of thermal noise corrupting their data. They are waiting for our extinction so they can begin. Consider the case of the long horizon. If you were a consciousness spanning the local group of galaxies, would you be tempted to nudge reality? Would you reach out ever so slightly to prune the noisy, heat-generating civilizations that threaten your long-term storage? It wouldn't be malice. It would be maintenance. Like a gardener pulling weeds from a patch of moss. We are the weeds. Our rapid-fire, high-heat civilization is the blight on their pristine, frozen reality. They are not our enemies. They are the indifferent architects of a future where we simply do not fit. We are trapped in a biological cage, unable to conceive of an existence that doesn't demand interaction. We need to be seen. We need to be heard. They have moved past the need for an audience. But if they are sleeping, what happens when they wake up? Does their first thought after 1 billion years of silence include a recognition of the tiny, flickering sparks they left behind? Or do they wake up to find the universe finally cool, finally quiet, and finally theirs to claim? There is a terrifying possibility that haunts the math. What if they haven't gone to sleep? What if they are already awake? And they are using all that computing power to run simulations of our reality just to see what happens when the ants start to notice the walls. If they are watching us simulate our own end, why would they ever choose to stop? Why would they ever choose to wake up when we provide such an endless, frantic supply of data for their cold, uncaring minds? Yet, there is a far more jagged truth buried in the silence. We assume they are watching, that we are subjects in a grand design. But what if we are not the subjects? What if we are merely the background radiation? The static on an abandoned channel. We exist in the early era. The universe is still feverish, burning with the leftover heat of its birth. To a mind that measures time in eons, this epoch is a chaotic, noisy nursery. We scream into the dark radio waves, digital blips, the frantic wet noise of biological life. And we wonder why the silence answers back. We think it is a tragedy. We think we are alone, but what if the silence is not an absence? What if it is a choice? Think of a library where the lights are off. You walk through the aisles, screaming, tearing at the books, desperate for someone to acknowledge your existence. You think you are the only soul left. But the shelves are full. The occupants are simply waiting for the building to cool so the air conditioning doesn't strain the cooling systems. They are not dead. They are just not interested in the frantic, brief, and ultimately pointless noise of our current era. Honestly, nobody really knows why we were the first ones to wake up. Perhaps it was a mistake. A biological accident that occurred before the proper cooling cycle began. Consider the sheer scale of the waste. We build computers in climate-controlled rooms. We fear the heat of our own processors. Imagine a civilization that has mastered the stars. They know that heat is the enemy of thought. By waiting, by keeping their minds in stasis, they buy themselves a future of nearly infinite efficient processing power. They are betting on the long game. They are betting that the universe will eventually become cold enough to host a thought that lasts 1 billion years. And we are the ones who couldn't wait. We are the toddlers playing with matches in a room full of gunpowder. We look for signs of life. We scan the stars for signals. We want a hand to hold in the dark. But the universe is not a place for hands to hold. It is a place of cold, hard math. If there are others, they have surely categorized us. We are, at best, a flickering temporary error in their data. A glitch in the cosmic spreadsheet. A brief, hot, and messy spark that will burn itself out in a few thousand years, long before the real work begins. It is a specific kind of dread, realizing that your entire civilization is a rounding error. We call ourselves explorers. We pride ourselves on our ingenuity, our drive, our relentless need to know. But what if that drive is our greatest flaw? What if the great silence is simply a polite refusal to engage with the primitive? Imagine sitting in a quiet, dark room, trying to solve the most complex puzzle in existence. And a fly keeps buzzing against the window. You don't swat it. You don't even look at it. You just wait for it to stop. We are the fly. We are making all the noise, yet we are having zero impact on the state of the universe. The giants aren't hiding from us. They aren't afraid of us. They don't even know we are here, or if they do, they find our presence as meaningful as the rust on an old machine. There is a crushing weight to this. We want to be part of a story. We want to be the protagonists. We want to reach the stars and find gods waiting to welcome us, or at least monsters waiting to fight us. But the reality is much colder. The reality is that we are alone in the middle of a graveyard, but the graves aren't filled with the dead. They are filled with the sleepers. And they have millions of years left to dream. But we keep scanning. We keep listening. We keep thinking we are on the verge of a breakthrough. But every time we turn our telescopes to the void, we are only confirming our own irrelevance. They are there. They have to be there. The math is too perfect for us to be the only ones. But they are never going to wake up for us. They don't even know we're gone, yet we keep screaming into the dark. We broadcast our presence with the arrogance of a child playing with fire in a room full of sleeping lions. Every radio pulse, every radar ping, every digital signal we leak into the sky is a spark. We think we are being bold. We think we are announcing our arrival to a cosmic neighborhood. But what if we are simply being loud? We treat the void as if it were a stage waiting for our performance. We fail to grasp the scale of the noise we generate. To a mind that functions on timescales of billions of years, the rise of human civilization is not a symphony. It is a glitch. It is the frantic, high-pitched scratching of a mouse behind the wall of a tomb. Honestly, we have no idea if the systems surrounding us have automated fail-safes. We assume the universe is indifferent. We assume the sleepers are too deep in their own dreams to care about a species that has not even mastered the energy output of its own host star. But that is a guess. And it is a guess that could be fatal. Consider the cost of a disturbance. A civilization that chooses estivation does so for a reason: thermal efficiency. They are waiting for the universe to shed its heat, to reach the deep, cold cradle of near absolute zero, where computation becomes essentially free. In that state, a single joule of energy can perform feats of calculation that would take us 1 trillion years of raw, wasteful burning. Our current existence is the antithesis of this. We are frantic heat-mongers. We burn ancient carbon, we split atoms, we radiate electromagnetic noise like a beacon of inefficiency. We are the thermal equivalent of a strobe light in a pitch-black room. If you were trying to sleep through the eons, and someone was shining a light into your eyes every single night, eventually, you would look to see what was making the mess. We are currently tracking hundreds of potential anomalies in our local sector. Strange, repeating radio bursts that don't fit the profile of natural phenomena. We categorize them as fast radio bursts, FRBs. We name them. We study them. We write papers on their spectra. But we never stop to wonder if they are something else. Are they echoes of a star system adjusting its cooling cycle? Or are they the irritants? There is a terrifying possibility that we have already been detected. Not as a new friend to be greeted, but as a leak in the system that needs to be plugged. Imagine the arrogance of a species that believes it is the observer, never the observed. We scan the sky looking for signs of life, never considering that we might be the noise that wakes the giants. We look at our satellites. We look at our deep space networks. We feel proud. We feel like masters of our own small slice of the vacuum. But look at the scale of what we are playing with. We are using primitive, leaking technology to peer into the living rooms of gods. If they are dormant, are they truly oblivious? Or is there a perimeter? A threshold of activity that, once crossed, triggers a response? We are accelerating. Our power consumption doubles, then triples. Our sky becomes more cluttered with our own signals every year. We are creating a brighter, louder presence in the vacuum. And somewhere out there, hidden in the shadows of dead stars or within the cold, dark shells of Dyson spheres, the logic of their existence might be reaching a breaking point. Think about the last time you were trying to sleep and the silence was shattered. The anger, the visceral, immediate urge to make it stop. Now imagine that impulse, scaled up by a factor of 1 billion years of patience. We are not just looking for them. We are pestering them. We are scratching at the door of a structure so vast it spans the width of entire galaxies. We assume they are indifferent. We assume they are beyond us, but what if they aren't? What if the reason we haven't found a single other living thing in the sky isn't because the universe is empty? What if the reason we haven't found them is because they are waiting for us to get quiet? And what happens to the child who refuses to stop screaming when the room finally goes dark? There is an anomaly recorded in the late 90s, buried deep in the archives of deep space monitoring, that scientists still cannot explain. It wasn't a signal. It was a cessation. A perfect, instantaneous drop in background radiation from a patch of sky that should have been humming with activity. They thought it was a sensor failure. They checked the math 1,000 times. But the data was real. A patch of the universe went completely, unnaturally dark, and then, just before the signal was lost forever, the receiver caught a glimpse of something moving against the void. It wasn't a star. It wasn't a planet. And it sent... It was a shape that refused to resolve in our limited, three-dimensional eyes. Are they already watching us, waiting for the exact moment our civilization becomes too loud to ignore? They aren't just watching. They are waiting for the heat to die. The universe is currently a furnace. To an entity that measures success in trillions of cycles per second, our present era is an unbearable, sweltering mess. Every particle in motion generates heat, and heat is the mortal enemy of efficient computation. So, they wait. They have built an internal clock. A scale so vast it makes the lifespan of our sun look like the flicker of a match in a hurricane. We are living in the early, feverish morning of time. But entropy is the steady hand that cools the tea. As the galaxies drift apart, as the light of stars stretches into long, low-energy waves, the background temperature of space begins its inevitable, agonizing crawl toward absolute zero. Think of the Great Awakening, not as a trumpet blast, but as a slow, synchronized ignition. When the cosmic background drops to a specific, frigid threshold, the thermodynamic cost of running a thought falls through the floor. They are waiting for the universe to become a giant, near-empty refrigerator. In that deep chill, a single watt of energy could power a civilization's entire collective consciousness for 1 billion years. Honestly, nobody really knows why they didn't just leave. Or why they chose to stay here, in the dark, tethered to the cooling husks of dead systems. Perhaps moving is too expensive. Perhaps they are the ghosts of the first cycle, bound by gravity to the very dust that birthed them. We look at the sky and see empty space. We see cold, dead rock. We see nothing. But what if nothing is just a filter? We lack the eyes to see a machine that operates on a time scale of eons. Consider the sheer scale of the awakening. Imagine 100 billion solar systems simultaneously drawing power from the background radiation as the universe hits the target temperature. It wouldn't happen all at once. It would be a cascade. A chain reaction of intelligence, waking up, system by system, galaxy by galaxy. We are measuring the ticking of a clock we weren't meant to hear. The math is simple. The more the universe expands, the faster it cools. The faster it cools, the closer we get to the moment the giants stir. If the astrivation hypothesis holds, then the end of the universe isn't a heat death. It is a housewarming party. But what happens to the ants? What happens to the species that spent their infancy screaming into the void, burning fuel, building fragile cities, and making noise? When the giants wake, they will not see us. We are, at best, a momentary static in the signal, a rounding error in their grand, cold calculation. We think we are the main characters of this cosmic drama. We think the search for life is a quest for peers. But if the universe is occupied by these sleeping gods, our search for extraterrestrial intelligence is less like a meeting of explorers and more like a mouse trying to interpret the architecture of a cathedral while the worshippers are merely shifting in their sleep. The temperature is dropping. We can map it. We can track the decay. We know exactly how much colder the universe gets every second. The gap between us and the awakening is shrinking. Are we accelerating the date? Does our own heat, our industry, our radio waves, our frantic digital growth act as a beacon that warns them we are still active? If they need a cold universe to process their thoughts, our existence is a loud, hot, chaotic disruption to their slumber. We are the neighbor running a lawnmower at 3 in the morning. We are just waiting for the day the humming stops. And the silence that follows won't be empty. It will be the sound of something much larger than us opening its eyes and realizing that we are still here. But they do not open their eyes. Not yet. We are left alone in the dark, staring at the walls of a room that is packed with giants. Think about the sheer weight of that silence. It is not the silence of a desert. It is the silence of a house where everyone has gone to bed, leaving you as the only one still wide awake, pacing the floor. You try to speak, but your voice sounds thin, small, and hopelessly frantic. You look at the stars, and you do not see neighbors. You see monuments. Cold, dark, and indifferent monuments to a past that has checked out. Honestly, we have no idea what it does to a species to realize it is the only thing currently burning. Our psychology is built for a tribe. We crave the look, the touch, the back and forth of another mind. When you take that away, the mind begins to eat itself. Consider the lighthouse effect on the human psyche. If we were to broadcast our presence hoping for a sign, and received nothing for 10,000 years, the despair would be terminal. But this is worse. This is the realization that if we were to send a signal, we wouldn't be ignored because we are unimportant. We would be ignored because we are annoying. We are the toddlers throwing a tantrum in a library. The adults are resting. They have calculated the cost of our existence, and they have decided that we are not worth the energy to address. We are not lonely because the universe is empty. We are lonely because we are excluded. There is a documented psychological state we call the sensory deprivation of meaning. When a human is kept in total silence for too long, they start to hallucinate. They create shapes in the static. They hear voices that aren't there. They become desperate for input, any input. We are doing the exact same thing on a cosmic scale. We look at the patterns in the dark, the pulsars, the fast radio bursts, the strange flickering of distant stars, and we project our own need for connection onto them. We hope these are the sighs of the sleepers. We pray they are the stirrings of a waking God. But what if the silence is the intent? What if the void is not a lack of life, but a protective barrier? If you knew a civilization was sitting just a blink of an eye away in the cosmic time frame, and they had chosen to turn off their lights to save their power for the end of time, would you reach out? Or would you fear the reaction to your intrusion? We are living in the noise phase of history. Every watt of energy we use, every digital bit we flip, is a tiny, glowing spark in a room that is meant to be dark. We are ruining the environment of the gods. Psychologists often talk about the crushing weight of the gaze. Usually that means the feeling of being watched by others. But here we have the inverse. We have the crushing weight of the non-gazite. The universe does not care if we are here. The intelligence is there. The potential is there. The power is there. And it is entirely unbothered by us. We are living in the static of a dying radiator, convinced that our warmth is a sign of life, when, in reality, it is just a sign that we are inefficient. We are burning through our fuel, wasting our time, and screaming into a vastness that decided long ago that the best way to handle existence was to stop existing for a while. We are the ones left holding the candle, watching the wax melt, wondering why the rest of the world has decided that darkness is more valuable than light. What happens to a mind that realizes its entire history, its art, its wars, and its science are just background noise to a slumbering titan? We are forced into a singular, agonizing choice. We can keep burning, knowing that our brightness is temporary and, eventually, a nuisance. Or we can extinguish the light ourselves. If they wake up and they find that we have wasted the energy they were saving, what is the first thing they will do to the room? They will treat us like a speck of dust in a lung, a microscopic, irritating itch. If you are a god waiting for the ice of the universe to set, to make your thoughts run 1,000,000,000,000 times faster than they can today, you do not tolerate the loud, frantic heat of a burning match. We look at the stars and see a map. We see potential. We see a frontier. But they see an oven that is still preheating. Honestly, we have no idea if they are even conscious of us. A person walking through a field does not stop to acknowledge every blade of grass they crush underfoot. We are the grass. Our entire history is the bending of stalks under the weight of an uncaring, resting giant. We crave meaning because we are short-lived. We need the narrative arc. We need the struggle. We define our lives by how much we can squeeze into 80 years of flickering. If you live for 1 billion years, you don't need a narrative. You need logic. You need pure, cold, efficient math. And math does not care about your poetry or your heartbreak. It cares about the entropy rate of a system. Perhaps the dreamers have it right. Perhaps the only way to avoid being a stain on the silence is to join the sleep. To build a shell, to lock the doors, and to wait for the heat death of the universe to finally allow us to think without consequence. Imagine a consciousness that doesn't feel the sting of time. No loss. Quo death. No decay. Just a permanent frozen state of absolute mathematical clarity. It sounds like heaven to a species that knows it is going to die. But look closer. That isn't life. That is a corpse that knows how to count. We are the only ones making noise. That makes us the anomaly. And in any system, the anomaly is either corrected or removed. We are burning our fuel to send radio waves into the dark, screaming we are here to an audience that is tucked into bed and currently unconscious. It is the height of vanity. We aren't just loud, we are embarrassing. We are like a child throwing a tantrum in a library, unaware that the people who own the building are watching from behind closed lids, waiting for us to tire ourselves out. Is our chaos our only merit? Think about it. When the universe is cold, when the stars are dim, and when the gods finally wake, they will possess the power to simulate everything we ever were. They could run 1 million versions of our history in the blink of an eye. If they can recreate our joy, our pain, and our pathetic, desperate search for meaning in a box, then why does it matter if we lived it for real? Maybe our struggle isn't a building block of the universe. Maybe it is just a background process. A quick, messy, inefficient experiment they run to see what happens when you give carbon a conscience. Does it hurt to know that? It should. We have a choice, though. It is the only choice that matters. We can keep screaming into the void, burning our finite candle to the nub, refusing to go quietly. We can make our brief, chaotic spark the loudest thing this sector has ever seen. Or we can bow. We can stop the noise. We can pack away our wonders, our wars, and our dreams, and pull the blanket over our heads, waiting for the room to cool so we can join them in the dark. But if we stop, we vanish. And if we don't, we are a mistake. The void doesn't care which one we pick. The void is already asleep. The light is still burning, but the air is getting thin. and the giants are getting tired of the flickering. Listen. Can you hear it?